something that I want to start doing with more of the guests that I have on. Um, actually, I think this will be a good maybe closer question before we get to maybe a fun thing for the audience. Uh, what would be your so if there's any person who's listening to this or happens to listen to this who is Jewish or Messianic Jew, what would be your recommendation to them as far as uh, wrestling with Jesus or any of that? What if you could give them like a piece of advice? What would it be?
Yes, that's a very compelling question. Okay, that Jewish person who is going to want to wrestle with the question of Jesus has to take all the baggage that they're carrying and just for the moment put it down. Put down the Holocaust, put down the terrible things that happened to Jews by so-called Christians. We'll get to that later. But for right now, put the baggage down. Read the book of John, start to finish. Don't stop. Don't look anything up. Just read John's gospel. And after you've gone through it, then start parsing through the chapters and start writing down your questions and start asking a reliable friend or someone who you can consult with, or use the internet with great discretion, because the internet's full of a lot of nonsense, of course. But I think the point in this case is keep the baggage aside. We'll address the questions later. You know, the classical response from anybody that you witness to is, well, what about that guy on some island in the Pacific? Hey, I'm worried about that guy. But right now, you and I are talking about Jesus, not that guy. We'll get to him later. Maybe we'll go do it. Maybe you and I will get the money and fly out there and talk to him. But for right now, I'm compelling you to respond to Jesus. You know, here's the information we have about him. Here's the historical facts. Here's the written record, 23,000 copies of the New Testament. I mean, Homer's Odyssey, for example. How many original manuscripts do they have of that? 60? Nobody questions it. But everybody questions the New Testament, or the Old Testament for that matter, whatever. So I think, to answer the question, put down the baggage, read the Gospel of John to start with, through and through. It's not that long. You can do it in a little while. And then you can go back and start parsing and start asking questions and underlining. And there are reasonable questions there. You can read it and you can say, this is an anti-Semitic trope. I understand that. But maybe you should read the Jewish version, like the complete Jewish Bible version, or other similar types of versions, which are de-gentilized and not causing offense. How many times I've been told, before and since, and to this very minute, the New Testament is just an anti-Semitic screed. No, the New Testament was entirely written by Jews, Messianic Jews, and maybe Luke wasn't, but that doesn't matter. Okay, whether he was or wasn't doesn't matter. But let's just understand now that how it has been translated and transmitted can be read anti-Semitically. All the problems with the Pharisees and all the the synagogue of Satan comment, that requires study. You have to study that to understand all that stuff. Like my position, for example, on the Pharisees. They're painted as being just these terrible, scheming, bad people. Maybe they were, I don't know. But that's not what the Pharisees were in general. The Pharisees were scholars of Judaism who lived a certain type of religious life. That's all they knew. Of course they were going to bring into question some of the things that this fellow said. It was against what they were used to, what all they knew. So look at the Pharisees a little differently, and all of a sudden, they're not these bad people necessarily. They just didn't know any better. And plus, you have Pharisees that become true believers that change the world. You have, Nick at Night, Nicodemus and others. What was the fellow from Cyrene? Wasn't he? I forget his name. Goodness, my brain. The tomb, the fellow that donated his tomb.
Oh, Judas?
No, that wasn't. When Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
Kim, are you listening? Joseph of Arimathea.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. You can edit all this. Joseph of Arimathea. I'm not sure he was a Pharisee or not, but listen, he was a wealthy Jewish man in that culture, and he was a believer. So I think that there are certain obstacles. There's plenty of obstacles. There's anti-missionary organizations, most notably Jews for Judaism, who are very good at being able to try to shake you up and to what's the word? Bust up your belief and try to show you evidence that he's not the Messiah, et cetera, and so forth. So it comes down again to faith, but at the same time, I think that a open-minded reading of the texts and certainly a detailed study further into the text in both the Hebrew and Greek Bibles will bring you to a point, a crossroad, if you will. The crossroad is the question I asked earlier. Is he or is he not who he says he is? My feelings are that even though people with very good objections and strong feelings against him, when they do that type of work, open-minded research, put the baggage down, and then, understand how these books were written, etc., they are going to come to a conclusion. And if they conclude he is not the Messiah, then they're lying to themselves. I believe that. I believe that they have to lie to themselves because it is just so overwhelmingly obvious that he is who he says he is if you just understand what the scripture says and take it without bringing in all the, the Nazis were singing Christmas carols when they sent the Jews into the concentration camp gas chambers. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Pretty terrible, actually. What does that have to do with anything with your relationship with God and his Messiah? Nothing. There's nothing to do. You just have to put that aside. We'll address that later, and we can address it. That's where I stand on that particular position. I look at people who I love, who I've discussed this with, who absolutely positively will not hear about it because they're lying to themselves. They see the cost. You brought up the calculating of the cost. They think incorrectly that the cost of having this faith and being able to surrender themselves to this Messiah is so unimaginably great that they will not allow themselves a moment to think about it. I can't do anything for them other than pray.